In this video, we're going to talk about section types and what they are and how we can apply them in both the build or if we're doing a load and how we attach them to student requests and a couple of different tips to maybe do this process a little bit quicker than individually attaching. So first of all, section types. Over on the left-hand side within Power Scheduler, under Scheduling Setup, we can click here. If we have any section types set up, we'll see them listed here. If we do not, we can click on New. When we click on New, we have the option to create the name and the code, which would just be 2 characters that we choose. Once we enter that information, we click Submit, and then those items would show up here. You'll see I have several different section types set up. So what are section types and how can they help us? Section types are going to be a great tool for you to use if you have several different sections of a course that meet, but certain sections need to be restricted to a certain group of students. So for example, you'll see here I have Fall Driver's Ed and Spring Driver's Ed. I may have 6 sections of Driver's Ed in the fall and 6 sections of Driver's Ed in the spring. But based on a student's birth date, they may need to take Driver's Ed in the fall before they'll turn 16 in the spring. So I can set up a section type and attach it to that student in either the teacher assignment if I'm doing a build or to the course if I've copied over my master schedule. And then those students that requested Driver's Ed and have the Fall Driver's Ed section type should be enrolled into the Fall Driver's Ed sections. So then I'm not having to check my birth dates, go through, make schedule changes after the students already have a full schedule. I could do the same thing if I have PE that is separated by gender. I can attach the section type boys or girls PE, or if I have a beginning band that needs to, I have several different sections of band, but one section needs to be beginner band or something of that nature. So section types help me accomplish this. But just simply creating the section type here is not enough. I then have to attach it in a couple of different places. So if I'm doing a build and I'm letting Power Scheduler build my schedule for me, build my master, then I have to put in teacher assignments. So if I'm using section types, those section types will need to be attached to the teacher assignments. So if I go over here under Resources and click on Teachers, and let's say I go down to a teacher, and I'm going to go to Assignments. So let's say I'm going to add a new teacher assignment, and I pick the class I'm going to associate with this teacher. This teacher is going to teach Driver's Ed, so I'm going to scroll down and find my Driver's Ed course. There we go. It was hiding. And then I'm going to submit. So we're going to say that this is going to be Fall Driver's Ed. I need to have 3 sections of this in semester 1. So I have associated the course. I've said that for this course, the section type is Fall Driver's Ed. I need 3 of those, and they're all going to be in semester 1, which is my fall. So I can click Submit. And then let's say I needed to also have spring. I can click New, Associate again. Submit. This one is going to be Spring Driver's Ed. I also need 3 sections of it, and it's going to be semester 2. And I click Submit. So now I have my section type attached to those courses. And if I am allowing my master schedule to build using the scheduling engine, then those section types will be attached to those courses. With my student requests, I have a couple of different options here. If I am allowing my students to enter their course requests using the course screens, there's not an option for them to choose the section type whenever they make that request. And so I have to then attach it to my student's request. So I could do that individually. If I go over here to students, I can select my students. Let's say I want next year's 10th graders. I'm going to select those students. I can click into every individual student. I can change this drop-down box to request, so it automatically takes me to their request. I'm going to click in my first student. And if my students entered requests in using the student screens, I can see those here, and I would have to attach the section type code that I want and click submit. So as you can imagine, if I have a lot of students, that could take a lot of time. So I can do it a couple of different ways that would be a lot faster as well. So if I select students, let's go back to search my students. Let's say I have next year 10th graders that want to take driver's ed. I'm going to select them, and I'm going to select my students by hand. These are the students that have requested driver's ed and need to take fall driver's ed. So I can just hold down my control key and select a couple of different students. I'm going by maybe a list that I have, or I've printed a list of birth dates and I know that these students need fall driver's ed. So I'm going to select these students. And now I can go to this student and add in that request individually, or if the students have not used the student request screen and I am entering in their request for them, I could mass add the request for all of these students at once. I can go to the functions and I have mass add requests. So if I click on that, it allows me to again associate the course. So let's say, again, I'm not using student screens here. I'm putting in the request for these students. So these all need driver's ed. So I selected that. They all need to be in fall. And then I choose my request type. So the request type is a little misleading. The required doesn't really mean core, required course, or required to graduate. That just means that the student, if they request this course, they need this course. Elective is just that. It's an elective course, but if they don't get it, they can have one of their alternate or substitution courses. And then the alternate would be those alternate courses that were selected that can replace if a student does not get their first choice with electives. So if a student requests driver's ed, they need driver's ed. I'm going to leave it at required, and I'm going to click submit. So if my students didn't request driver's ed themselves on the student request screen, I can select which ones I want. I can add the request for driver's ed and the section type for those students all at once. But what about in the situation where my students did already put in their requests using the student request screens? Or maybe I have already put in all of the requests and I don't want to go back in individually and do the section types. I can do that using my update selections function. If I scroll down under tools and click on functions, and then continue to scroll down and click on update selections, this gives me the option to make a selection and update things en masse. If I am working with this particular example of section types, I need to attach section types to the student request. So I'm going to choose schedule requests from my current table, and I want to select all the records in schedule requests. Now I have 24,764. That seems like a lot, and it is. That is because that is all of the requests that have been entered in Power Scheduler for every year. I want to just work on the request for 23-24 school year. So every year within PowerSchool has a year ID. 22-23's year ID is 32 or 3200. That is the same for everyone. So next year's year ID for everyone for the school year 23-24 will be 33 or 3300. So I want to search by year ID equals 3,300, and I want to search within either one of these because it's the same number. And now I have almost 6,000 requests. That seems like a little more realistic. I then can filter further. So I know I'm working with driver's ed requests, so I can click this drop down and I can choose course number equals, and I can paste the course number in for driver's ed that I'm using in my course catalog. And I want to search within the almost 6,000 that I've already narrowed down. So I have 389 requests for driver's ed. So I have some options here again. Anything that's listed here, I could filter by if I have student numbers or year of graduation. I could do any of those, but I just want to select my records by hand. So if I click here, take a minute and my select records will pop up. And this is where I can select which students need to have the section type code attached. So let's say I need Alcaraz, Alcorn, Alexander, Ambrosio, Armstrong, and I'm going to go through and click several different students. I'm going by my list maybe that I've printed out of birth dates, and I know that these students need fall driver's ed. So whoever I need to select, I've selected them by holding down my control key and then I click submit. So now I only have 18 requests. These are the students that I've just selected and their requests for driver's ed. So I can modify those records, and then anything that's in this drop down box I can modify. So I want to choose section type code, and I want to change that to fall driver's ed and modify and confirm. Now all of those students that I selected have the section type attached all at once. If I was doing this for PE, I could do the same thing and just select my females, just select my males and attach their section type, and it just makes things go a lot quicker. So let's look at that if I go to my students. So let's see. Ambrosio was one of the students I looked at. If I click on her and go to her requests, you'll see that she has fall driver's ed attached to her request now. So that's a quick way to attach it to your requests. Remember, if you're doing the build, you have to attach it not only to the request, but also to the teacher assignment. What if I am copying over my master so I don't have teacher assignments? If I go to my sections of a course that I have created, or copied over, I can go to a course. I can find the course that I'm looking for. So we're looking at driver's ed. I can go to the sections of that course, and I can create a section type here. So if I do not see anything in this column, what I would do is go to the section number, just like on the live site. Click on the section number. I have all the information that I typically see, the semester, the period, and then I have this section type drop down box. So I can update that information here and click submit so that when my students are loaded in, the section types are attached to the sections that I have copied over and manually adjusted within my master schedule. I can also update all of those sections at once instead of going in to individually update each section type. So the first thing I need to do is grab this number here in parentheses, which is the ID for my load or my build. So I need to remember that 201, and I'm going to go back down under functions and update selections. So this time I'm going to choose schedule sections because I want to work with the sections that I have either already built or I've copied over. and I want to select all of those. Again, that's way too many, so that's including all of my sections. I want to filter by just the ones in my current scenario. So I'm going to choose build ID equals, and that's where I put in that 201, that number that was in parentheses, and I'm going to search. So I have this many sections in my current scenario. I can then filter again. Let's say I want to filter by just my driver's ed course numbers. So I could do course number equals, and I'm going to paste that number in for driver's ed. And I'm going to search within the ones I've already narrowed down. And so I have 12 sections of driver's ed in this current scenario. So then I could select the records by hand. And let's say I have 12 sections. Sections 1 through 6 all need to be fall driver's ed. So I'm going to select all of those by holding down my control key. Click submit. So now I just have those 6, and I can modify the records. And I can again change my section type code. There it is. Excuse me. And I can put in fall driver's ed. Modify selected records and confirm. So then let's say I want to do that for my others. So I'm going to select all of my sections. I want to filter by build ID equals 201. Search for those. And then I want to search for my driver's ed course numbers. Within the 1085 I've already narrowed down. So I have those 12 again. I can select those records. This time I'm going to do 7 through 12 and submit. And I want to modify those records. And I want to change the section type. It's going to hide from me again. To spring driver's ed. And modify and confirm. So then I would have just updated 12 sections of a course in just about 2 or 3 minutes, whereas going in individually to every single section would have taken a great deal of time. So if I go back to my courses and I find my driver's ed, oh, let's do by name. And I go to my sections. If I had already not had something here, now all of these sections would be updated en masse. And so those are just a couple of tips on how you can use section types for your benefit and how you can update those items a little bit more quickly than just doing individually.